Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. I have two guests with me today, but before we start, I just want to take a couple minutes to tell the backstory about why I requested this interview. And it started with Hurricane Ian about 6 weeks ago. Our city was hit pretty bad. Our area, Southwest Florida, was hit pretty bad with the hurricane, and it was my first hurricane. So it was pretty traumatic event for a first time hurricane family. Everyone tells me that they're not always like that, and we just survived Nicole too. So I can say too that they're not all like that. So the hurricane hit on a Wednesday, and it was we were in shock for a while. And by Saturday, I had to leave and drive up to World Dairy Expo in Wisconsin, which was difficult. And if anybody follows, you'll see that we did a video on that too, an episode about the hurricane and about getting out. So if you're curious, you can find that about 6 weeks ago. So I had left with the kids and drove up to Wisconsin. And then on Saturday evening, night pretty much made it to Tennessee for the night and had a shower, which was so great because it was our first showers. We had no electricity, obviously no internet, no water, and nothing. We turned into kind of a third world country overnight. And so made it to Tennessee, had a shower, recorded our episode. And then I woke up the next morning ready for the rest of my drive and just, put on my game face for work. And I had a trade show to do, and the shock, just push it away and go. So we did the trade show, loved it. It was awesome. We had a great time. The following week on I guess it was Friday night, we packed up everything and started the drive back home again. Same thing. We stopped for the night in Tennessee, woke up in the morning, ready to finish our drive home. And by that time, the shock had worn off. And I guess being away from it for a week, I had forgotten what it all felt like and what had really happened. So by the time I got to Cape Coral and came off the 75, and even a little bit before that, it was about probably 3 a.m., 2:30, 3 a.m. on Sunday morning by that time. And I was driving into town and it started to hit me again. There's no streetlights. There are no hydro poles. There are no trees. And I just started to feel so overwhelmed. Like I was gone for a week, but this didn't go away. There's still, most of the city at that point was still out of electricity. And I don't think we had internet yet or anything at home. And my husband had stayed home with the animals and had to work and everything through it. So he was well aware of what was going on. But as I drove back in, it was just so overwhelming. And as I got closer to my house, I didn't even know where to turn. There were no street signs, but the streets didn't look the same anymore. There were no trees. There were no landmarks. It was like, there were buildings, but usually this is such a green area. We have so many trees that you don't really see a lot of the buildings. You see the trees. So I just was so choked up. Like, I can't believe like we live here now. Like this is a disaster. How can this city ever recuperate? And it just, made me so sad. And I got home and it was great. I woke up in the morning and my husband had texted me the day before while we were on our way home and just said, I know you're going to get home late, but I'm just feeling overwhelmed and grateful. And I just want to make sure we can go to church in the morning. And I said, for sure, I can't sleep in anyway. It doesn't matter. I'll be up. So we got ready for church and of course I was awake, but my body, my mind, my soul was tired. Right. So we got ready for church, us and the kids, and drove downtown and just looking and going, there is the contents of every person's house pretty much south of Veterans Parkway is on the road right now. And it was just so unbelievable. Boats on people's yards. And so we got to church, parked, walked in the front door, and there are pallets and pallets and pallets of boxes. And I was like, where did this all come from? It's almost impossible to get into Florida, let alone how did all of this stuff get here? And it was in the sanctuary, and the walls were lined with food. And I thought, wow, who did this? And I do have some of the boxes right here, so everyone can see it was a box just like this. These were just lining the church walls. And we went through the service, and it was so emotional. There were, I think, 12 families that are homeless now in our church. And you just hear the devastation everywhere. People still couldn't get back to Pine Island. The pastor's from Pine Island. He was able to get a boat over. And everyone just had this feeling of relief in God's presence. And we sang. And all I could think of was The Grinch Who Stole Christmas and the morning of Christmas. And everything was gone in our town. Everything was stolen in a heartbeat like that. Everything was gone. But we all came to that church and sang and gave glory to God and was thankful and grateful to be alive. And those boxes are just, I walk by and I see it and I just feel that again. Like that this is just such an amazing, we're all the who's just praising. It's like, oh, well, we don't have anything. Some of us are homeless, but we'll make it through. So anyway, as soon as I saw the boxes, the pastor actually, he had said, I'm not really sure how they got here. I'm sure somebody here knows. I've got to figure out where they came from, but I want everybody to take 2 boxes, keep one, because one thing, the stores weren't open and there was nothing. So unless you have a store of food, you didn't have any food. So, and then give one away to somebody. So we all took our 2 boxes and made sure that we gave one away as well. And yeah, I saw, luckily your website's on the box, and I thought I need to connect with these guys. They need to know how grateful and what a great experience that was to be able to know that there's people outside that were thinking about us and that were helping us kind of process this. And it's just food, but just food when you don't have food is the most important thing. So anyway, that's the backstory of why I wanted you guys to come on the show. I'll introduce you, Karl Steidinger. How do you pronounce your last name? Steidinger. And he was born in Central Illinois, and he moved his family out to this town that I live in, Cape Coral, in 2016. He's currently the executive director of the Midwest Foodbank. And Scot Bus, he was born in Minnesota, and he moved here to Fort Myers 25 years ago, and he's the marketing and development manager at Midwest Foodbank here in Florida. So welcome, Karl and Scot, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and a huge thanks for sharing that story. We're honored to hear that and just hear the impact that it had on you personally. But it was shared at your church, so obviously there was a lot more people there. So we're honored to be able to hear that story, and makes us feel good about what we do.
Well, that's good. And sorry, I usually don't take over the front part of the show, so but I figured we had to show how important this was. So can you each tell me a bit about your backgrounds?
Go ahead, Karl.
Well, my background, I was born and raised in Central Illinois. I actually grew up volunteering at Midwest Foodbank as a young man. Midwest Foodbank started in 2003, and it started in Bloomington, Illinois, 35 miles from where I was born and raised. So my dad would drive a truck for Midwest Foodbank, and we always heard of Midwest Foodbank, and so we had opportunity to engage with them. I worked out of high school for a local feed mill. I drove a delivery truck for 12 years. And then some family friends had started a ministry in Cape Coral, Florida, and it's a ministry for single moms. And my wife and I moved our 3 children down to Cape Coral to engage with them in that ministry. My wife served as a mentor, and I was the hedge trimmer and the grass cutter. So that was my role there.
Wow.
But took a position as a service technician for an air conditioning company immediately upon arriving in Cape Coral. But then position that I now occupy opened up, and I was approached by the board to consider, and just great fit for us. It kind of incorporates everything that I enjoy: serving people, driving big trucks, running forklifts, and just kind of working with people in general is kind of what I enjoy. So just and as I said in my bio, just opportunity to live out my faith in my day-to-day activities. So super excited for the opportunity that came along 5 years ago, and here we are.
That's amazing. And Scott?
Um, my story is not quite that deep. Mine's I was down here, I was doing sales, and I got in the nonprofit, and I absolutely loved the nonprofit aspect of it. But I wasn't that happy with the job I was at. Just I only served 125 people, and I was like, we all kind of every once in a while go on to Indeed or wherever, and we're like, oh, what else is out there? And I stumbled across Midwest Foodbank, and it was a Christ affiliated. I was like, well, okay, I like that, and that's me. And I remember coming in for the interview and blown away. Like I was looking for a job sort of, but then I came in and I was instantly like, wow, this is where I want to be. And I think it was, you're asking like how faith was involved, and I feel like I was led here probably for this situation because the day after the storm on Thursday, the sun came up, no power, no nothing. You got your windows open because you got no air conditioner. So second the sun came up, my eyes were open. You can't shower. There's no water.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole lot to do. So I got up out of bed, put on my clothes, walked around my house, and I'm so blessed. I mean, and whatever, pool cage, roof, yada yada yada. Nothing crazy, but nothing I needed to address right away. Jumped in my car. I drove here, and Carl's already here. He's already on the forklift. He's loading a truck. He's talking on the phone like this. You know, um, Richard Schultz Family Foundation had already called us. How can we help? How can we help? United Way had already called us. How can we help? How can we help?
Wow.
And then over the next couple of days, we couldn't really get out there that we needed volunteers. We need volunteers to pack boxes. People just started showing up. How can we help? How can we help? I mean, the community, the way it came together, those boxes, yes, that was Midwest Food Bank, but it was Southwest Florida community because we had hundreds of volunteers in there. I mean, the first week we have to keep track of the hours. The first week alone, 7 days after the storm, we had over 600 hours in volunteer hours, people coming in. And
Wow.
we Carl's got a great plan here, and Salvation Army, Red Cross, they're first people out the door, and we have to have supplies ready for them, and so we have those on hand, and then we just kept going. Trucks kept coming in. I mean, Carl will be probably better at how many trucks we got, but I mean, it was just truck after truck after truck, and it was all hands on deck. I mean, I do marketing like you said, but Carl put me in a box truck. It was the biggest truck I could drive with my license, and I was driving all over. And I had never done that before, and I was using, I was going to shelters. I was seeing it, firsthand. I mean, it was hard work. It was sunrise to sunset for 11 straight days.
Wow.
When you were driving to when you were driving to Wisconsin and back, I was driving a box truck around here, the whole time. And it was the most gratifying and hard work. I'd go home and put my head on a pillow, and it felt like I blinked, and I'd wake back up, no alarm, no nothing, just ready to go on to the next thing. And then our home office was unbelievable as well, because I mean, I'd call them, when I would get reception, which was spotty, and
Yeah.
I'd say, I need this, this, and this, and they would do it. They sent down trucks. It was just like just the whole area, how everybody came together. And when you said, this is your first hurricane, well, I counted the other day. This is my fifth hurricane in 25 years, and Charlie was pretty bad, but nothing compared to this. And it was the worst by far. And when you said it, and then when you also said it was gone in a blink of an eye, I was like, it took 9 hours for it to go. It was over
That's
top of
true.
like forever. I was just like, oh my gosh, is this gonna ever stop? Because I'm like, because a lot of them, like, I mean, today was a tropical storm. By the time it may or may have not gotten here, but I mean, that's how they kind of are a lot of times, where it's like, oh, you see it on, on the TV, it looks so bad, but it's really not. It's just a rainy day. And then the other ones, they kind of go through relatively quick, like an hour, 2 hours, and they're here and gone. This one, it stalled over top of us and it just sat there. And then
Yeah.
even right after it happened, we didn't know what happened on Sanibel. We didn't know what happened on Fort Myers Beach. We didn't have TV. We didn't have anything. So the next day when we're doing all this stuff, and it was 2 or 3 days later where I was, out on right before Fort Myers Beach delivering food that they were putting on barges to take to Sanibel, to take to Fort Myers Beach, to take to Pine Island before they got the bridges fixed. That's when I was first, kind of an eye opener. I'd seen some stuff on news and things like that, but next you actually see it with your own eyes, like you had said, when you left, you knew it had happened and this and that, and then when you came back, and then you actually start seeing other stuff, and the stoplights, how everything's a four-way stoplight, and that's just kind of backs everything up. You couldn't go left on a lot of the roads. You didn't have any gas anyway, so you had to pay attention to what you were doing there. Electric vehicles were basically useless at this point because you had 300 or 200 miles on it, but that's all you got. You didn't know when you're going to have power again. So it was a quite a scene, and I was just so thankful that I was able to be with Midwest Food Bank and be able to help people out, because it was gratifying, and I felt like that's why I got led here for this event.
Wow, that's incredible. And what was your experience, Carl, through all of this?
Um, yes, similar and super, as I said, super thankful to be in a position to be able to serve people. I had been through Hurricane Irma with Midwest Food Bank, so I knew what to expect. I'll share a couple things. One, just kind of speaking to the providence of God. Last January, I have a particular volunteer that likes to work by himself, but needs a project every year when he comes down. He's a snowbird, and I had our roof inspected here at the food bank, like maybe a year ago, November. And the gentleman had told me, you probably ought to think about re-screwing the roof, but nothing urgent, and so on and so forth. And I had solicited a bid and received that, and it was more than we wanted to spend. But I thought that's a perfect project for Dale. And so, excuse me, Dale came down. I had purchased the screws for a fraction of the cost of what it would have taken to have the roofing company do it. And Dale re-screwed our roof last fall, or last January and
Oh,
into
wow.
February. I firmly believe, had we not done that, we would have had damage at the food bank. So thankfully, we were without power. But when Ian went through, came here, no damage at the food bank, was able to get our frozen product onto trailers, as Scott said, Thursday morning. Um, Connected with the state EOC immediately. They're phenomenal up in Tallahassee and very responsive. What our needs are. Requested 5 loads of water and 5 loads of MREs on Thursday morning. Um, uh, had those delivered Friday morning, and called
Wow.
our partner agencies and said, "Hey, come get it." All those loads of MREs and water went out Friday. I requested again Friday night from the state EOC for Saturday, 5 loads of water, 5 loads of MREs. Those delivered then again Saturday morning, and same thing. We pushed all of those out in the community Saturday throughout the day. And so, and then Sunday we slowed it down a little bit. We didn't take as much, but I don't remember exactly the numbers, but maybe it was 3 and 3 or something. But we continued to receive that water and MREs, knowing that as long as people were without power, that was an essential item. We had to flood the community, and it's really the strategy that we would just flood the community with water and food, because as you experienced, Chrissy, when an event like this happens, people need hope, right?
Yeah.
And you said you'd ask us about the why, and why do we do this? Like, the heart of the gospel is hope, right? That's why we share the gospel. That's why we do what we do, and as Christians. And so that food, that box, that feeling that you had when you walked in and you saw that box of food, and that's sort of phase two of our efforts. But when you walked in and saw that, it signaled somebody cares. There's somebody out there that's working to help my situation, and you felt hope. And so our strategy really is to flood the community as much as possible, as quickly as possible with food and water. Again, to send that message that it's all going to be okay. It's going to be okay. People are responding and things are going to get back to normal. It's going to take some time. We still see it 6 weeks later. You don't have to look very hard to see the effects of Hurricane Ian. We see the tarps on the roofs. We see the stoplights that still aren't fixed, right? So there's still difficulty there, but people realize that we're on the road to recovery. And it starts with water and MREs. And then we shift in sort of a phase two into the more higher quality food. MREs are great, but let's be honest, anybody that's had them, they have a certain amount of a shelf life. Like, not that they expire, but that they're just like, we're tired of MREs. We're tired of plain water. And so the box of food that you held up there, that contains enough food for a family of 4 to 5 days to keep them going. There was soup in those boxes. There was canned vegetables in those boxes, protein bars, um, different snack items. I don't remember all that we put in there, but typically we would put some type of fruit in those boxes just to give
Toilet paper.
Yeah,
toilet paper,
cleaning
paper
supplies.
towels,
Yeah,
hand sanitizer,
yeah.
essentials, right? Like things that everybody needs. And so, we set up, and as Scott said, we logged 600 volunteer hours in that first week. Those were just folks showing up. We packed, I think we had 1,500 boxes on hand. We packed those, had an additional 35 or 4,500 sent down from up north. We packed those and got those out in the community over the 2 to 3 weeks after the storm, and also had just tremendous support from our other divisions that were also packing those boxes and sending them into South Florida for distribution, both through our own channels and through Salvation Army and other partners of ours. So just as Scott said, this wasn't a Midwest Food Bank effort. It was a community effort, and Midwest Food Bank is just super grateful to be a small part of the recovery.
Yeah, for sure. And the one of the most astounding things to me, having been here through it and having to leave Florida so early, it was almost impossible to get out. The 75 was closed because of the dam break, and 41 was closed. So luckily, I know somebody who, a friend who's been here forever, knows of the back roads, and she helped me be able to figure out how to go all the way down to LaBelle and then go way up the center of the state to try to get around these, even, um, 17 was closed too. So
Mhm.
how on earth did you get trucks in here
Well,
by Friday and Saturday? That's just fascinating.
we had the same challenges. I had heard that the bridges were closed on 75 and 41, and we tried to reroute trucks the route that you took through the middle of the state. Saturday was difficult, and I believe Sunday was still difficult, if I'm remembering correctly. We had trucks delayed significantly. We were unloading trucks late at night because they hadn't showed up, and but those are things that are outside of our control. And,
Yeah.
and
And you still got
again,
it done, which
yeah,
is so
praise,
amazing. It was
praise the Lord
some,
for truck drivers that were willing to work extra hours. Praise
yeah.
the Lord for staff that put their lives on back burners. I've said this many times as I've had opportunity to talk about Hurricane Ian response. We kind of took Thursday, and it was really Scott and I that came in. The rest of my team, which is a team of five, we're a skeleton crew, and we rely heavily on volunteers. But they took the day, and they all had some damage to their homes. They had some concern for families. I remember even Scott on Thursday was driving around checking on friends and family that he hadn't heard from. And we all had those concerns. Um, but Friday morning, I was driving to work, and I just sent a text to my team just saying, "Hey, if you're physically capable of reporting to work, I need everybody at work."
Yeah.
And to a person, and it makes me emotional just thinking about it, but to a person, they put their lives on the back burner, and they said, "We're coming to work because we have a position whereby we can serve the community and do good for others." There were roofs that needed to be tarped. There were family and friends that needed to be checked on, and they came to work and focused on what needed to be done here. And I'm so proud and humbled at the same time to just have that caliber of people working here at Midwest Food Bank that would come in and just be so selfless and give the way they gave. As Scott said, it was 14, 16 hours a day. We went home and slept and came right back to work. There was early mornings and late nights
Yeah.
for, I think we went 11 days straight without any time off.
It
It
was,
was literally come to
it was
work,
the,
go home and
yeah,
sleep.
yeah, it was the second Sunday, and it was on Saturday. Carl came to us like he was going to convince us of something. He was just like, "We're not working tomorrow. We need a day. We need a day." I was like, "Oh, okay." So finally, like 11 days later, sunlight to sunset. I was just like, okay, I'll go watch football tomorrow, I guess. And that was like the first time that, there was some places had started to open, especially, further, inland, of course, had gotten open, or they had generators, or they had power or whatever. So on that Sunday, I went out and watched football, I ate some nachos, and kind of got back to normal a little bit for 3 hours at least. And then, did some cleanup, and then Monday, back at it again for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. So how much food did you actually give out during Ian?
Well, we're still it's still going.
Mhm.
There are still some people coming in. After the first 2 weeks, we had done 300,000 meals, MREs. We had
Wow.
done 3,500 disaster boxes, 30 cases of water, 5,400 pounds of produce, and then after a month, it was almost 52,000 cases of water, 9,000 disaster boxes, 500,000 MREs, 500,000 pounds of produce and dairy products. And then Tanya, our volunteer coordinator here, and she does all the inventory and stuff. She added it up, and it was over 3 million pounds of food in the first 30 days. And it has a value of about $6.2 million. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot.
I guess.
There
So
was,
where did it come from? Like, did it just come from all over the US?
yeah, it
So
did.
the MREs and the water are primarily provided through the state of Florida. But yeah, Midwest Food Bank has partnerships throughout the United States. And that's what's so great about being a part of a larger organization, because we had the muscle of the entire Midwest Food Bank family behind us. And so, as Scott said, our service was spotty. We all experienced it, right? I had a spot across the road where I could get cell service. And a large part of what I do is inbound food products. So I would go over across the street and I would call Mike and Brian, who are up at our on our central team up at our corporate office, and I would say, here's my list of my wish list. I need shelf stable milk, I need rice, I need these products, and they would call me back or text me, which was the best way, and then I would walk across the street and call them. We've got this, and this available. How many loads do you want? And I would provide them with that direction, and then they took care of all the logistics. So they scheduled the trucks. They'd tell me, okay, they're going to be here on Thursday or on Friday or whatever. So it was just phenomenal. The response, again, it was not just a Midwest Food Bank Florida response, but it was a Midwest Food Bank response that made it possible for us to do all of what Scott has mentioned and continue to do what we've done. No way could five of us done it alone, but because Midwest Food Bank really is a family, and because we do support each other when there's floods in Kentucky, Florida can send product to Kentucky to support the Midwest divisions or the central divisions, with product that is needed in their response to a disaster that is closer to their homes. So it was a phenomenal response. We had food coming from as far away as I believe Minnesota.
Wow.
We had Indiana, we had Ohio, we had Pennsylvania, Virginia, Georgia. We picked up food in all of these states. Texas, we had food come over from Texas. So um, yeah, it was coming from all over the place.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
show up to work some days. There'd be trucks lined up from they had arrived at night at some point. And they were like, we only have one dock here. So it was one truck would come in, pull out, next one would come in and pull out. And, forklift drivers were just pulling the stuff off, weighing it. And it was basically going out the door on the other side. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we have a lot of volunteers that do, drive the forklifts. Well, then the forklifts all of a sudden were like, Well, their power, they're electric. Well, we don't have any power. We don't, so then who was the guy next door who borrowed us is they got propane forklifts. He's just like, you guys want our forklifts? So we're using
Wow.
their propane forklifts and they were just like, here, take them, please, please. And we're, another group just helping out for sure. Otherwise it would have been us loading it off and loading it on. And that would have been harder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Back at the church at Cape Vineyard, that's what we did for the next week was just move the boxes, move the
Yep.
food. Try
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was actually kind of fun. But I
And a
can
huge
imagine
shout
if
out to organizations like your church, Cape Vineyard and City First Church, and there's so many. I just hate to because I will miss them. I mean, out
yeah,
in Lehigh, we had churches out there that were doing distributions. You may do some food distributions at your church. I'm sure you do. In fact, I know you do because you're a partner of ours, but not on that scale and not that frequently. And yet you came together as a faith family and provided for your community. And listen, that's where it goes back to the Southwest Florida community came together to make this all happen. We can provide the boxes. We have some resources, and we were able to get food into Southwest Florida and get a box of food to you. But if you wouldn't have stepped up and given that box of food to your neighbor or to your community, it does no good sitting in your church. So
that's it.
what a team effort. Just
Yeah, for
super
sure.
super proud of the response from this community.
Yeah, and the pastor had said, "Ian means God is gracious," and it is so true. The way that the community has come together, and the people I didn't know before Ian, and people I know now, just from we would just show up at the church, and the church gave out thousands and thousands and thousands of hot meals every single day. We had all of the groceries lined up so that people could come and shop for free and take what you
Mhm.
need. And there were more volunteers than we needed almost every day. So it was really, really incredible. And I think that we're all better off now. As crazy as that sounds and as expensive. And our insurance adjuster hasn't even been out yet. But I can say we are better off now as a
Yeah,
community than we were 6 weeks ago.
Yeah,
oh,
after
for
after
sure.
the storm, it was how are you doing? How did your house fare? It wasn't, the political stuff. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
did you vote for him? It wasn't like, oh, that person or whatever. It was just like you were just checking on each other, and it was just the well-being and just the humanity of the whole thing. And it really, it almost brought a tear to my eye how we did come together like that. And like I said, people would just kept. We didn't have any power. We didn't have any water. People just kept coming in. They just kept showing, how can I help? How can I help? And normally there's like a waiver and this and that, and a little bit of a training process. It was like, get in line right there, and here we go. And everybody picked on, and they just grinded it out. And I mean, there was kids. I mean, I love to see there was 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids, and they were so happy to be in there helping. And there was older people that, oh, I got to sit down. I got to sit down. Can I do something sitting down? Absolutely. We need you to do this. I mean, there was something for everybody to do, and and I remember one time we basically ran out of parking for the volunteers that were here. We were like, park on the grass, but
Wow.
there's trees laying down and everything else. I'm like, at your own risk. But
That's
it was,
amazing.
yeah, it was heartwarming for sure.
Yeah. So how did Midwest Food Bank actually start? Where did it come from until a disaster? I never even heard of you before. So where did this come from and how long ago?
So our story starts back in Bloomington, Illinois. Uh, David Keyser and his brothers farmed in Central Illinois, and they had always been generous and giving back. But David read a story in the local newspapers called the Pantograph of two local food pantries that were having trouble filling their shelves. And he felt like he could help. The farm had resources, he had connections that he had generated throughout his career. And so he went to his brothers and they cleaned out a 2-car garage on their farm, and they started securing some food products and giving it to these local food pantries. And they started with these 2 or 3, which grew to 11. And their heart was to always be a blessing, not a burden, so that the food would be free to these pantries and allow them to do what they do. And
Wow.
the word of free food started spreading, and it, 11 turned into 25, which turned into 50, partner agencies. These are not-for-profit organizations that are just serving their local communities, churches, soup kitchens, food pantries, veteran supports, you name it, recovery organizations, from addiction recovery organizations and such. So, kind of a funny story, or just an interesting story that goes along with the Midwest Food Bank. When David and his brothers wanted to name the organization, like any business, you want to pick a name you're not going to outgrow, right? This is your brand. This is what you are. And they just, as they brainstormed, they couldn't imagine ever being outside of potentially Indiana or Iowa or Missouri, right? So they picked Midwest Food Bank. Well, now we're 10 locations in the United States, which includes Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Not exactly the Midwest, and also East Africa and Haiti. So, you've heard the
Wow.
saying, "You want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans." This is one of those uh, this one of those stories where we named it Midwest, or they named it Midwest, and here we are, uh, so many years later, all over the United States and even international. But yeah, disaster relief started in 2005 with Katrina. At that time, that was the largest natural disaster that had hit the United States. And David was still working on the farm. The food bank was then in a warehouse that they had built on the farm to house the food products. But he loaded a semi and took it down to and I don't remember exactly. I think it was like Biloxi, Mississippi, but it doesn't matter. He had taken this load of food to the Salvation Army camp, where they were set up serving the victims of Hurricane Katrina. And when he got empty that night, Salvation Army captain came up to David and said, "I want 10 more semi loads of food like this." And David's a man of great faith. So he said, "Okay, we'll do it. We'll deliver." And his wife happened to be with him. She says, "You don't have that kind of food. You don't have 10 semi loads of food. Where are you going to get it?" He said, "I don't know. I feel like the Lord told me I'm supposed to deliver those loads of food. So we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out." By the time that cleanup was over, little Midwest Food Bank in central Illinois, had delivered over 150 semi loads into that disaster zone. And so
Wow.
from that experience, a partnership was born between Midwest Food Bank and the Salvation Army that still exists today. The boxes that you saw are packed at our locations and delivered to Salvation Army camps wherever they're mobilized. So no matter where they're at in the United States, they call Midwest Food Bank, and our agreement is that within 24 hours of that phone call, we will have a load of boxes on the road. These are packed by volunteers. It's driven to the location by volunteers, and ultimately then distributed by the Salvation Army volunteers. So
Wow.
it's just a tremendous, there's common values there between the two organizations, and just a tremendous partnership that has really stood since 2005 and Hurricane Katrina. And so while Scott and I have a limited amount of experience with hurricanes, I have too, and this is Scott's first one at Midwest Food Bank. Midwest Food Bank as a whole, as an entity, has significant experience in disaster relief. And so we've got a very good process how you respond, and what are the steps that are taken to get people back on their feet, provide the
Wow.
hope that I talked about earlier.
That is so cool. I just love that. Talk about multiplying the the loaves, right? That's all I could think of.
Right, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so how many lives do you think you touch in a year? I know that's probably really hard
It
estimation.
can be a little difficult to quantify, but we figure on average, and again, disaster relief is really tough to quantify because we're not tracking as closely as we maybe would with our partner agencies. But between 1.5 and 2 million lives, or individuals, on an annual basis,
Wow.
when there's blue skies.
Yeah.
Here when we've had opportunity to serve really much of the west coast of Florida, that number will go up significantly, and many of those we will never know. We
Yeah.
won't know the impact that we had, and that doesn't matter. We're here to help. While it is nice to be able to say we impacted X number of lives, at the end of the day, we just feel good to be in a position to help.
That's so cool. And then switching tracks a little bit on the faith side. Obviously, faith is a big part of what You guys do what this was founded on. But for people who don't know Jesus, how can you articulate how a 2,000-year-old story of a man can drive people to commit their entire lives to spreading love, his love?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. For those that may not know Jesus or don't know the stories, I would point to the scriptures and say, this is what Jesus did, right? Like he brought people together, he fed them, and then he shared the good news. And he told them why he was there. There's several accounts throughout the Gospels where Jesus took a few loaves of bread and a few fish and he fed 5,000 people, or he multiplied some food and he fed 4,000 people, right? So like this is what he did. And so as we look at our positions and our opportunity, the opportunity that we have, again, it's about providing hope. Our mission statement is to share the love of Christ by alleviating hunger and malnutrition locally and throughout the world, and providing disaster relief, all without discrimination. And I think that's the key, without discrimination, because Jesus didn't discriminate. He
Right.
brought people together. It wasn't, oh, you're this or you're that, you can't be here. It's no, you're welcome. Here's some food. And oh, by the way, I'm here to provide something much bigger than food. I'm here to provide salvation for eternity, right? Something that you desperately need, even though you may not know it. We're all in desperate need of that gift of salvation. And so, it's what we view as our jobs every day to provide food, and ultimately, whether it's through um, Vineyard Church or City First Church or wherever that food goes, our hope is that the gospel is shared as that food is distributed.
And Scott,
Yeah, I had mentioned a little bit earlier when, when I was how I got led to Midwest Food Bank. Like I didn't know anything about food banks. Like when we came in, and there's a video we always show that kind of explains what they are. I'm what Midwestern from Minnesota, I middle level economy wise, grew up, I was never worried about my next meal. I was never worried about any of that stuff. Like oblivious to all of it. And then, I got into nonprofit, and then I just loved it so much. And then I was just like, I got led to nonprofit, and then I got led to here. I mean, I was just literally casually looking through what other jobs are available, just out of curiosity, you know what I mean? And then there was this one, and, I sent out a resume, and Carl called me up, and, um, the girl he had here before was leaving, and he had to get somebody, and he had interviewed a couple, and I could almost hear in his voice like he was like asking questions, like he was expecting the wrong answers, I guess. And then we just hit it off right away. And then on the phone, it was a phone interview, and then he was like, hey, he was like, yeah, we'll bring you in for an interview. And then I came in for an interview or whatever, and then I sent him afterwards, hey, thanks for, I was like, hey, that was fun. I really enjoyed that place. I'm gonna either volunteer, I'm gonna donate there, even if I don't get the job, I don't care. I'm glad I found that place. And then he reached out on Friday. He's like, hey, we're gonna let everybody know on Monday or whatever. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but hey, he goes, it's gonna be good for you. You're gonna like the news or whatever. You know what I mean? He was kind of hitting like I was gonna get the job, and then I was just like, what? Oh, I'm getting the job? Okay. And then like I said, and then I got here, and it's and just the way it is, we pray on Tuesdays before we do our loadout and all that stuff. And I've always kind of I've been one of those people that I pray every night, and I do go to church and things like that, but I don't always necessarily share my feelings with other people. I don't, it's just harder for me to do that for some reason, but ever since I've been here, I'm more outspoken about it, and I'm more, of my other friends. And sometimes my friends will like make fun of me, and I just kind of laugh like, hey, make fun all you want, that's fine, I'm happy. Guess what, I went to bed last night, and I slept like I slept like a baby, and it was great. And I don't make as much money as I used to make, full disclosure, but I'm in a better position every other way than I've ever been in. My mental health is so much better, my family life is so much better. you know um I've been able to actually volunteer and do other things, and that I wasn't able to do before because of work. And then the feeling I get when I'm at work, everything is so much better. And it's because of Midwest Food Bank, and it's because of my faith.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And that's, I guess, some of the points that a lot of people wouldn't understand is you have to sacrifice, right, to do some of these things, but then the blessings are so much bigger than what you had before. And I hear stories of that all the time, and it's really incredible. And I have one last question for both of you. And Scott, you kind of answered it, but I'll ask you first. So, why do you serve? What did God put you on this earth for?
Why do I serve? Just because I get led there, I guess. And one of my when I was telling the stories about how I'd gone to Fort Myers Beach and how I'd delivered a truck full of this and these people that I saw this one guy when I was on Fort Myers Beach. I was on the land side because they hadn't they were doing shipping a barge out to Sanibel, and I seen these one guys and they were just sitting there not doing much. I wasn't sure if they were part of the work crew or what, so I was over there talking to them, and they were like, "No, we live. You see that house over there? It was one of those little modular homes right when you go over Fort Myers Beach on the right hand side." And he's like, "There's a shrimp boat on top of it right now." And he's like, I don't have any insurance." He goes, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know where I'm going to go. Um, and I was just like, I go in my pocket and I was just like, I had $100 bill on me, and I was just like, I wish I could do, man. I got 100. And he's like, save it. He goes, where am I going to spend $100 on? There's nothing. The money's worthless right now for me. That, you know what I mean? There's look around. Where am I going to spend? There's nothing to do. And I was like, all right, I got some water and some MREs. And he was, oh, you know what? I can use those, and he took those, and, and then I didn't even know what else to do. And I gave him my business card. I said, hey, if I can help you in any way, please reach out to me. I'm so sorry this happened to you. And I mean, maybe it was just a small little thing for that one guy, but it was part of the reasons why I do what I do is that. I mean, and Karl said it best, and our Jada, one of our girls from home office, had said it as well. I mean, this is what we're here for. I mean, it says disaster relief right on our trucks, and I think you had said you were having fun or something earlier, and I was just like, it's hard to say that I was having fun, but I was just so fulfilled and grateful and blessed that I was able to do all this stuff, and it makes me feel so good. And the more I do, I keep getting better feelings and everything else. So, I mean, I guess that's why I do it. I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I'm not I'm not into I'm a money junkie. I'm just help other people and give back what I can. And it makes me, and every time I do it, I get more excited about it, and talking about it now, I get even more excited about it. And I certainly don't wish another Ian upon us anytime soon, but there'll be other opportunities for us to, maybe it'll be small. Hopefully it'll be on a smaller scale where it'll be, some families or a community, a small community or something like that where we can go help them. But just helping people it just makes me feel so good that I just want to figure out other ways where I can do it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And Karl?
Short answer. I do what I do for the glory of God. I asked a pastor one time when I was a little discouraged and wondering if I was having any impact. I talked to one of our partner agencies, happened to be a church, and I said, "Do you think that there will be people in heaven because I sat in an office and procured food?" And he looked at me like I had horns. He's like, "Why would you even ask that question?" He says, "There's absolutely going to be, because people come to our church because of the food distribution, and they stay for the gospel." And that is why I do what I do. Because one day I'm going to walk the streets of heaven and talk to people that received a box of food from Midwest Foodbank, and I'm going to meet them for the first time.
I love that. That's beautiful. And you sure will. Just knowing where some of the food just from one church went, knowing those people's stories, right? You're going to hear so many good stories. That's really amazing. And so where can people find you? And most importantly, where can they find you to give if people feel like they need to?
Yeah. thanks for asking. MidwestFoodbank.org, and select the Florida location, please, so that we realize that would never want to take away from our other divisions, but we do work in Florida. So MidwestFoodbank.org, or our address is 5601 Division Drive, Myers 33905. You can mail a check or come out and volunteer. Super happy to see people, or just come and take a tour. You can hear Scot's passion. That's what we saw in him when he's referenced the interview. When people come in and tour, he provides them a wonderful experience, and gets them energized. And very, very often we see them coming back volunteering, or giving in support of our mission. So either way, we'd love to see new faces and engage new people.
Awesome. Also, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today and taking some time out of your day to talk about all of this. And thank you for being an important part of, a very emotional and difficult time here in Southwest Florida. On behalf of like everybody that I know in our church and everything, it's just so grateful. And yeah, and if anybody's looking for a place to give, I can personally tell you this is a worthy organization. So thank you both.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Egg Spotlight YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, or Egg Fuse channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And have a great day.